Sir, your voice is not audible.
Now is it visible? Yes, the
Yes,
sound
sir.
is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, yes.
I am audible. Okay. So let's see this one of the new topic. Up to last class, we have discussed about progress monitoring and control. Today, we'll jump to a new topic. This new topic is contract management. Very often, you may require it when you will join a senior manager or so. You have to prepare tenders, you have to participate in this tendering process, etc. So, let's see the fundamental concepts of the contract management. We'll first see some introduction to how to manage or some introduction to managing contracts. Then what are the different types of contracts we'll see. Then what are the different stages in placing a contract. What are the we'll see then the contract checklist. What items should be there in the contract checklist, and finally we'll little bit see about the contract management. Okay. Actually, you'll see many organizations they choose to obtain their software externally. Isn't it? Because they will give to a third party develop the software for them instead of hiring people or recruiting people for developing software for them. They prefer to give as a contract to develop the software to a third party. Given their limited capability for developing new and reliable software, this seems sensible. So this is viable. This seems sensible. So these organizations think that it will be more cost effective to employ outside software developers for new development, while a reduced group of in-house software development staff maintain and export existing systems. So they think that it will be better if they can give this development of software to a third party, while they may keep a few person for maintenance also. They can keep few persons in-house for maintaining the existing software system. So they prefer to give it to a third party to develop their software. So the buying of the goods and services rather than doing it yourself is attractive when, in which case it is better that you should buy instead of developing yourself. It is attractive when money is available, but other less flexible types of resources are there in shortage. You are having money, but some other resources such as especially staff members are not there. Staff person months or staff time is very much less. It is shortage. So in those cases, you can people prefer to go for getting the software from outside instead of developing by themselves. So it is essential that customer organizations they should find some time to clarify their exact requirements at the beginning and to ensure that the goods and services delivered are satisfactory. So the customers, the clients, they should clearly say what are their requirements, because you see very often the clients also they do not know their proper requirements. As a project manager, you have to go interact with them, collect what are their exact requirements, then they develop the software accordingly. So the customer also they have to give some time to clarify what their requirements are, what are their exact requirements at the very beginning, and they should also ensure that the goods and services those are delivered by the vendor before they are satisfactory. They can give some suggestions if they are not satisfactory how to improve the quality. They can suggest. Some potential suppliers they are likely to be more accommodating before and the contract is signed than afterwards, especially if the contract is for a fixed price. You will see many cases the suppliers or the vendors they will say that okay, whatever the requirements you give in before the project starts or contract starts, after that we will not be in a position to change anything else. So this is very much applicable when they are putting a fixed price, because taking into all the functionality they have computed the price, and now if the customer says I require another requirement, another functionality has to be added, then their price will vary, which they cannot do because they have already fixed their price. So when they have quoted their price as fixed price, then they prefer that all sorts of requirements should be given at the beginning, not after the project starts, but which is really very, very difficult because the requirements will change. They are volatile in nature. They are not static. They are dynamic in nature. They are volatile in nature. So in that case, how to do? We should go for which type of contract? Let's see. Thus, as much forethought and planning are needed with an acquisition project as with internal development. So while you are developing your software internally, you are following internal development. How much planning you are doing? Similar planning is also required when you are trying to acquire to get the project outside. When you are trying for acquisition of project from outside, same planning you have to do. You have to give some effort to make proper planning and then go for getting the software from outside. Now let's see what are the types of contracts. There are various classifications. This is one classification I am showing, and other classifications I will say later on. So first one is a bespoke system. What do you mean by bespoke system? Bespoke system is a system which is created specially for one customer. That is bespoke system. You take the example of this railway reservation system. That railway reservation system is dedicated to only Indian Railways. No other company or they are interested in that. So that software is developed only for Indian Railways. Only Indian Railways is the customer. So that is a bespoke system. But you can see that the academic system TCS is developing for IIT or NIT, etc. Many customers are there. We cannot call them as bespoke systems. Off-the-shelf package. Off-the-shelf package means these are softwares which are bought as is, also known as shrink wrap software. That means they are available in the market. Go and purchase from that directly as it is. So off-the-shelf package or off-the-shelf components, they are already available in the ready-made. They are available in the ready-made state in the outside. You just bring it if you want. So you just bring it and use it. That's all. That off-the-shelf component can be available in hardware like various ICs, etc. Or in software also, various ready-made software is already available in the market. Go and bring them and directly use. Bought as is. That is off-the-shelf package. What is customized off-the-shelf software? We call as core software. It is a core system which is customized to meet needs of the client. So here also the software is available in the market. But that is just it's a core software. It contains only some major functionalities, high-level functionalities, and you can purchase it. Just a little bit you customize yourself. You modify a little bit. You customize according to your need, and then you can use. That is known as cost or customized off-the-shelf software. So this is one type of contracts. Whether you are going for awarding a contract for bespoke system or off-the-shelf package or customized off-the-shelf software. So where an equipment is purchased, it is referred to as a contract for the supply of goods. Please try to understand what is meant by contract. So when or where an equipment is purchased, then we say that it is referred to as a contract for the supply of goods. Normally we call as contract for the supply of goods. But with the supply of software, this may be regarded as supplying a service. Please try to understand every organization, normally they are having a section called as purchase and works section. In NIT Rourkela there is a section also, purchase and works. So when you are purchasing any items, goods, we call it a purchase order. But when you are bringing a service, you are purchasing a service like a manpower. You know our computer center, they are having a it's running 24 hours. How? Because we have given tender to some IBM and they have given some persons. So that's a service we are getting. Similarly, cleaning service, this is another service. Gardening service, another service. This is how we get through again tendering. So there's a difference between purchase of goods and purchase of services. Purchase of goods means in terms of kinds, the products that we are getting, equipments, they are all goods. What the services means, which are they are available in forms of services. You have seen examples are your gardening service, cleaning service, security service, etc. This you can call as service. So the supply of software, when you are saying this is software, this supply they are considering as a supplying a service. With the supply of software, this thing, that means this contract may be regarded as supplying a service. That is to develop the software or the granting of license, permission. we are having that MS Office or what Microsoft product. How we have purchased from Microsoft and they have given license. Okay, say 5,000 license they have given us. They have granted us 5,000 users license. So we call as granting of a license. Why that is granting of license is required? To use the software which remains in the ownership of the supplier. For us, for this Microsoft Office, etc., we are using the owner is Microsoft, and he has given us license. He has granted us license for say 1 year. For 1 year, they are taking some 10 lakhs rupees or so. So then every year that service is renewed, that license is renewed. So the supply of software, this may be regarded as supplying a service, that is to develop the software, or the granting of a license to use the software, and that software which remains in the ownership of the supplier. We'll see another classification of contract. So another way of classification based on calculation of payment to suppliers is as follows. This classification is based on how you are making payments to the suppliers to the firms. First category is fixed price contracts, then time and materials contracts, then fixed price per delivered unit contract. Let's first see the fixed price contract. As its name suggests, fixed price. In this case, the price is fixed when the contract is signed. So when you are signing the contract with the firm, you are fixing the price. Later on, they cannot change the price. So this contract you can consider maybe as MOU or so. So in this case, the price is fixed when the contract is signed. Here the customer know that if there are no changes in the contract terms, this is the price they will pay on completion. So if no requirements changes, no changes in the requirements or no changes in the contract terms, so how much amount they have agreed, they have signed, this is the price they will pay on completion of the project. Here the customer's requirement has to be fixed at the outset because the price is fixed. Later on you cannot change the requirement. So all the requirements have to be fixed at the outset. The customer's requirement has to be fixed at the outset. That is, the detailed requirements analysis have already been made. So before awarding the contract, you have already gathered the requirements, analyzed the requirements. If requirements are frozen, and then the party can start the work from directly those frozen requirements. Once the development is underway, the customer, the client, he cannot change his requirements without renegotiating the price of the contract. So if you want to change the requirements, then obviously the firm will say more money. You have to negotiate the price of the contract. Otherwise, it assumes that your requirements are fixed, price is fixed on completion of the work, this much price that both the parties have been agreed, you have to pay that much price. This is something of fixed price contracts. So advantages, every contract is having its own advantages and disadvantages. Those are easy. Please read yourself. Like in case of fixed price contracts, the advantages to the customer is that known expenditure. The customer know I have to pay at the end of the project, I have to pay this much rupees. So expenditure is known. Supplier motivated to be cost effective. So the supplier is also motivated to be cost effective because he knows these are the requirements, no changes later on, and this is the price, and accordingly he will calculate the price. So supplier is motivated to be cost effective. So supplier is motivated to be cost effective. But what are the drawbacks? Here the supplier will increase the price to meet contingencies, observed risks. Because you know the price is fixed, he cannot change. So in addition, from the very beginning, he will put a very high price. He will say that the contingency amount how to meet. If there are some risks might occur, and later on customer will not be here. So whether risks may occur or may not occur, he will charge some price for that. So like that, so supplier will try to increase the price to meet the contingencies which may or may not happen, or observe the risks. Whether the risks may or may not happen, they will charge some price for that. The second drawback I have already told you, in this case it is very much difficult to modify the requirements. You cannot change the requirements. Cost of changes likely to be higher. If you will change the cost, then what it will be monopoly. The firm will not leave you. He will charge very high amount. Threat to system quality. Since the price is fixed, so the system quality may be poor because the customer, the client, the developer, he will try to only make a profit. So, and he know these are the requirements. He will anyway he will just complete this development. He will complete the requirements, whatever the quality may be. He will deliver and take the price because he knows that the customer cannot change the price, cannot reduce the price. So there is some threat to the system quality. So these are the disadvantages of fixed price contracts. Let's see the next contract, time and materials contracts. In this case, the customer is charged at a fixed rate per unit of effort. As its name, their time is there. So in this case, the customer is charged at a fixed rate for what? Per unit of effort. For example, you can say that 100 rupees per staff hour or 200 rupees per person month, like this. So in this case, the customer is charged at a fixed rate per unit effort. So what is the, accordingly, how many units are there? How many person staff hour is there? How many person month is there? Accordingly, you have to pay the money. The supplier may provide an initial estimate of the cost. Okay, so initially the customer may provide an initial estimate of the cost based on what? Based on their current understanding of the customer's requirements. But this is not the basis for the final payment. Final payment will be made based on how many staff hours, how much staff hours you have worked, or how many person months you have worked. The supplier usually sends invoices to the customer for the work done at regular intervals, say monthly or quarterly. Every monthly or every quarterly, they will send the bill and customer has to pay accordingly. Advantages of this approach or this contract is that easy to change the requirements. Now the price is now fixed so that you can change the requirements and accordingly how many hours or how many person months or how many staff months or how many staff hours the firm has provided, accordingly they will calculate the price. So lack of price pressure can assist product quality. So since no price pressure on the developers, so it may improve the product quality, which was one of the drawback in the fixed price approach. This approach has also some disadvantages like customer liability. The customer absorbs all the risks associated with the poorly defined or changing requirements. If your requirements are poorly defined, if you are changing the requirements, all the risks the customer has to absorb because the client will take the money per person month or person hour. If your requirements are very ill defined, if you are changing, they will work for more person months, more staff hours, accordingly they will charge more money. So everything that will be charged to the customer. That is drawback. Lack of incentive for supplier to be cost effective. So there is almost no incentive for the supplier to be cost effective. Okay, as the requirements will change, accordingly the person hours or person months will be changed and the price will be charged accordingly. There is a lack of incentive for supplier to be cost effective. The next one is per unit delivered contracts. Okay, fixed price per unit delivered contract. So here this method is often associated with the function point counting. Function point already we have seen earlier. How many function points will be there in your project, that the proposed project, accordingly they will charge the amount. This is often associated with function point or FP counting. The size of the system to be delivered is first calculated or estimated at the outset of the project. So at the outset of the project, the size of the system to be delivered is calculated or estimated, maybe in terms of the function points. In your project, how many function points are estimated or expected? Accordingly, the money will be calculated. The size could be estimated in lines of code. Isn't it? You know, before a function point we have first got LOC, but LOC has so many drawbacks. So next we have moved to function points. So the size could be estimated in lines of code or LOC, but function points they can be more easily derived from requirements documents. Isn't it? For LOC we require code, but for function points from the SRS document we can directly extract the function point. So that will be more appealing. A price per unit is also quoted. Here also a price per unit. Okay, a price per unit is quoted. Per unit, what will the price is quoted, and then how the final price will be computed. The final price is then the unit price multiplied by the number of units. So what is the unit price into number of units? Or here you can say what is the price per one function point. How many function points are there? Multiply the number of function points into this price per function point. that will give you the final price. That has to be mentioned in the contract document. Okay. Let's quickly take a small example. Suppose function point like up to 2000 function point counts. Design cost is 200 rupees. Coding cost is 700 rupees, and then total cost per function point is 900 rupees. If your function point is in between 2001 to 2500, suppose design cost is 240, coding is 760, and total cost per function point is 1000, like that. So in this way, you can compute what will be the price that you have to pay. For example, suppose let's see the company that produced this table, in fact, it charges a higher fee per function point for large. If your systems are large, then the company may charge a higher fee. I will give a small example here. The company that produced this table, in fact, charges a higher fee per function point for larger systems. Suppose, for example, a system to be implemented contains 2700 function points. Okay, you want to develop a system, and you are expecting that you have counted there are 2700 function points. Then how much you will charge? The overall charge how you will compute? Let's see. See, 2700 means how it is calculated. So first you have to take up to 2000. What is the money? Then to again that 700. That means again you have to see 2000 to 1500. Another 500 will be taken from here, and then remaining 200 will be taken from this slab. So how much you will compute? So up to first 2000, how much? You have already seen 900. So 900 into 2000. Then what will isn't it 900 into 2000? Then next 500. I have to break this 2700 is broken like this. 2000 plus 500 plus 200 according to this slab. So first one is 900 into 2000. Then 1000 into 500. Remaining 200 each we have to take from 200 into 1040. In this way you can compute 2000 into 900, 500 into 1000 plus 2000 into 900, then 500 into 1000, then last one is 200 units into 1040. Those values you get from the table. So as a result you get 25,000, 25 lakh 8,000. So as the system will grow, for larger systems, the company charges a higher fee for function point. Okay. The scope of the application can grow during the development. Initially, you are having a limited scope, and while the software is under development, the scope of the application may grow. It would be very much unrealistic for a contractor to be asked to quote a single price for all the stages of a development project. For all the stages of the development project, it is very much difficult to quote a single price. How can they estimate the construction effort needed when the requirements are not yet established? See, initially you cannot tell all your requirements. If all the requirements are not frozen, they are not established, how the contractor can estimate the construction effort that will be required? So that's why this is very much difficult. In this case, one approach would be to negotiate a series of contracts, each covering a different stage of system development. For different stage of system development, you can negotiate a series of contracts. Not instead of negotiating only one contract, you can negotiate a series of contracts, maybe 4 or 5 contracts for the each covering a different stage of system development. For example, for completing the SRS document, so one contract. Then for the designing documents, another contract. For coding, another contract. Testing, another contract. So in this way, so you may try to negotiate a series of contracts instead of only one contract, where each contract covers a different stage of system development. Advantages are easy, you can read yourself. Here the customer understands. The customer understanding of how price is calculated, customer can easily do straightforward calculation. The customer can understand how the price is calculated. Compatibility between different pricing schedules. You can easily compare between or among different pricing schedules. Emerging functionality can be accounted for. If any functionality is emerging, you can easily accounted for that functionality. Supplier incentive to be cost effective. We have seen in the previous one, supplier there is almost no incentive. There is lack of incentive to be cost effective. But here, supplier incentive will be there to be cost effective, because you are just calculating in terms of the function points. How many function points are there? Accordingly, the slab is there, the value is there, and you can compute the total value or total cost. Okay. So advantages we have seen. Disadvantages here like this: the difficulty with software size measurement. Men need independent FP counter. So how to measure the size of the software? You will find difficulty with the software size measurement. So that's why you may need independent FP counter. You may require independent function point counter. Changing as opposed to new requirements. How do you charge? See, if it is new, okay, please try to understand. If it is a new requirement, you can fit into this slab. But if an existing requirement is there, you want to make minor changes to that, then it will not come in any of these function slabs. How to compute the charge for that? That's what I'm saying. That is a drawback in this approach. If it is in function person month, like we have seen earlier, okay, for changing this existing requirement, how many person months you have spent, accordingly you charge the money. But here it is not there. This is not given. So this will be the difficulty. This will be the problem. Changing as opposed to the new requirements. If this is the case, then how do you charge? No, it may not fit any. It may not fit to any of these slabs. Okay. Still, we'll go for another type of contract. That is very much interesting. So this classification is based on the approach that is used in contract selection is as follows. You want to select a contract. Based on that, you can make a classification. 1 is open tendering process. 2, restricted tendering process. 3, negotiated procedure. So let's see first. Open tendering process. You might have seen many advertisements in newspapers, in TV, etc. So we'll see those are called as open tendering process. Let's see what is this. The open tendering process is like this. First, any supplier can bid in response to the invitation to tender or request for proposal. So like NIT is what it requires some security service or manpower service or cleaning service. Then NIT will first advertise a tender in the newspaper, suppose. Then any supplier can bid in response to the invitation to tender. Any supplier can give its response, can give its quotation in response to the invitation to tender. So any supplier can bid in response to the invitation to tender or request for proposal. This is called as ITT or RFP. All tenders must be evaluated in the same way. That's why you have to unbiasedly evaluate the tenders. All tenders must be evaluated in the same way. You cannot give any preference to any person as if or if it's close to you or so. That what you cannot make any biasness. All tenders must be evaluated in the same way. Government bodies may have to do this by local or international law. So if the government organizations, Odisha government or central government, they do evaluation. Okay, they evaluate the different tenders. How? By local international law. By using what? By following the local laws, local authority or the local area laws or the government bodies, they evaluate these tenders. With a major project, this evaluation process can be time consuming and expensive. So this is open tendering is a very time consuming process. I will say some of the reasons. When you advertise, you have to give minimum 1 month at the last date. After that only you can, after the last date only you can evaluate. Then while you evaluate, there may be 2-3 levels of committees like this. So it will take some more time to go for this open tendering process. With a major project, this evaluation process can be time consuming and expensive. Maybe the time may be of the order of some months, 2 months, 4 months, 5 months, like that. Where the client is a public body, an open tendering process may be compulsory. So when the client is a public body, then an open tendering process may be compulsory. Like say in our institute, it's an public organization. So in those cases, normally we are going for the open tendering process. Then we'll call to restricted tendering process. So let's say the drawback of the open tendering process. In open tendering process, when you have made the advertisement, you have to wait for minimum 1 month. Okay. And it may happen that nobody may respond to your quotation, your advertisement. Nobody will submit their tender. Then what to do? So that's why this is a easier method comparison to the open tendering process. This is known as restricted tendering process. In this case, the bids are received only from those suppliers who have been specifically invited. So in contrast to the open tendering process, here you do not make open tender through advertisement in a newspaper or media or TV, etc. What do? You know in your locality, say 5% are there or 10% they supply this item. Computer in your local market, 10% you know. So what you do, you send the quotation, you send the advertisement only to those 5 or 6 or those 10. Let them submit their quotations. Instead of making it global, you can send the quotations only this limited number of firms. That's why this is known as limited tendering or restricted tendering process. Unlike the open tendering process, at any time the customer can reduce the number of suppliers being considered at any stage. So this is now open tendering process means everything should be transparent. You cannot, and whatever you have written, you have to wait for 1 month, again for evaluation under 1 month like this. But unlike the open tendering process, in restricted tendering process, at any time the customer can reduce the number of suppliers being considered at any stage. Last one is called as negotiated procedure or single tendering process. So this is let's say that in which cases this single tendering process is valid. Open or restricted tendering process may not be suitable in some particular sets of circumstances. Let's see. There are some cases where you cannot go for either the open tendering process or this limited tendering process. Why? Let's explain through a small example. Okay. Suppose there is a fire and that fire destroys some ICT equipment in our computer center. That suddenly, suppose fire caught before some days and it had destroyed some ICT equipment. Now the key concern here may be to get replacement equipment up and running as quickly as possible. You have to replace that part or that equipment, and there may not be sufficient time to embark on a lengthy tendering process. I have already told you tendering process means huge time taking, minimum it will take 3-4 months. And will the computer center wait for 3-4 months? No. So in that case, what you can do? You can go for single tendering process. Directly you can give to a party, you discuss with them, make the contract, he will give the quotation, take the approval for the boss, in our case director. This is the reason you have to give. Why you are going for single tendering? Because here the time is important and we are having several works are waiting for this computer. So we are forced to go for the tendering process. Single tendering process, you have to give that reason also. Okay. For example, suppose there is a fire that destroys some ICT equipment. The key concern here may be to get replacement the equipment up and running as quick as possible. And there may not be sufficient time to embark on a lengthy tendering process because the tendering process may take 3 months, 4 months. So in that case, I want to replace that ICT equipment in the computer center. So instead of going for this open tendering or the limited tendering process, we should go for the negotiated procedure or the single tendering process. For example, suppose there is a fire that destroys some ICT equipment. The key concern here may be to get the replacement equipment up and the running as quick as possible, and there may not be sufficient time to embark on a lengthy tendering process. See, another case you can go for single tendering process, like you have purchased some UPS or from some generator or inverter from a farm. When you will go for AMC, when you will go for AMC, if you have purchased the UPS from say a company, maybe UPS Emerson, suppose. When they will go for AMC, only Emerson people should come because they know their product. So in that case, it's better to go for single tender quotation basis or the single tendering process instead of going for instead of going for open tender process or limited tender process. That will save your time. Another example is taken here. That so another situation might be where a new software application has been successfully developed or built by an outsider supplier, but some extensions are required to the system. You require some more functionalities. Now you cannot go to another supplier. You have to go to the original supplier. And how you can go? Now you have to go to single tender. You have to give the justification that this software was developed originally by this expert. So now when there is change, so it should go to the same expert or the same developer. So this is another situation. Another situation might be where a new software application has been successfully built by an outside supplier, but some extensions are now required to the system. So this is known only to the original supplier. So as the original supplier, he has staff familiar with the existing system. So it might be inconvenient to approach what? You should not approach other potential supplier by a full tendering process. In these cases, an approach to a single supplier may be justified. So now in this case, both the examples here we have seen, in both the cases we can give a justification. In these cases, an approach to a single supplier may be justified, that is negotiated with only one supplier. Don't go for multiple suppliers. You can negotiate the contract with one supplier only. However, approaching a single supplier could expose the customer to charges of favorism. You can give only to your near dears. So that may happen. So it should only be done with a proper justification. So whenever you will go for single tendering process, you have to give this proper justification. Okay. So if you see, right now I do not have a form. There is a form which we follow in our Institute for Single Tendering process. There are some options are there. You have to give the proper justification. So that will be possible. I will show later on. So now let's quickly see what are the different stages in contract placement. So first you perform requirement analysis, then evaluate your plan, evaluate your plan for contract placement. Then you float the tender. Okay, evaluation plan. Okay, what this evaluation plan is? What will be your evaluation plan? What will be your metrics? What are your parameters based on which you will evaluate the tenders? This evaluation plan means that thing. Then you float the tender, invitation to tender. Then you have to evaluate. How to evaluate? Based on this plan. So whatever plan you have made here, whatever values for the parameters you have taken here, accordingly you have to evaluate the plans. Then you can send the results to the concerned persons. These are the stages those occur in contract placement. Okay. So now you can see that. So the first one is the requirement analysis. You should prepare the requirement analysis. Then only you can sign the contract. So in the requirement document, what should be present? What sections to be present? You should write down the introduction, description of the existing system and the current environment. What will be your future strategy or plans? Then the system requirements, which are mandatory, whether they are mandatory or desirable features, and deadlines. What deadlines, within what time you should submit the product. Then if any additional information is required from bidders, that also you can put in the requirement documentation section. So what do you mean by requirements? So requirements will include the functions or functionality with necessary inputs and outputs. What are the functions? What are the inputs and what are the outputs? Then standards to be adhered to. Now other applications with which software is to be compatible. What are the other applications with which your software has to be or is to be compatible. That also you have to specify in the SRS document. Then the quality requirements, for example, what should the response time, what should the throughput like this. The quality requirements also should be mentioned in the requirements or in the SRS document. Okay, the quality requirements like response time, throughputs also they must be included in the requirements or in the SRS document. Then it's the evaluation plan. What you should do, I have already told you. First you have to make the plan. Then only at the end you can evaluate your your project. So here you have to say how are the proposals to evaluated. As its name is evaluation plan, you have to write down how are the proposals to evaluated. So some popular evaluation methods are written below. You can see some popular plans. Some popular methods would include the following, like reading the proposals, interviews, demonstrations, site visits, practical tests, etc. So these are all what? These are what various data collection techniques or requirement gathering techniques we have already seen earlier. You please see yourself again. There is a need to assess the value for money. Okay, so in this evaluation plan, we should also know the assess value for money. Okay. In this case, there is a need to assess the value for money or VFM for each desirable feature. VFM approach, it is an improvement on what? It is an improvement on previous emphasis on accepting the lowest bid. So example, you can see that feeder file saves data input, and you can see what we are making the plan. 4 hours work a month saved $, or pound 20 an hour. So since 4 hours you have worked, 4 hours work a month, it has saved at 20 pound an hour. The system to be used for 4 days only. Okay, the system, it has to be used for 4 days. Again, it is specified in terms of what the system to be used for 4 years. The time period is given mentioned here. Now, if the cost of failure is $1,000, would it be worth it? So those things may be discussed when you are going for this approach. What is this approach? In the evaluation plan. Okay. So as I have already told you, there is a we have to use as VFM, assess value for money, and for each desirable feature there should be some VFM. VFM approach is an important on previous emphasis on accepting the lower bids. And example it is taken here, like the feeder file saves data input. There are 4 hours of work a month. It has saved at 20 pound an hour. And whether the system to be used for 4 years, if the cost of feature is less than 1,000 pound, what would it be worth it? Like this. So you can specify, you can make the plan. So invitation to tender, this is quite easy. ITT, note that the bidder is making an offer in response to ITT. So now suppose the ITT is product, we call that a document. Suppose that the bidder is making an offer where in response to ITT. Note that suppose a bidder is making an offer in response to the invitation to tender ITT. Acceptance of offer creates a contract. If you are accepting, acceptance of the offer creates a contract. The customer may need some further information from the developer, where the developer has to give those extra information. The drawback of this ITT method is that different technical solutions to the same problem, so difficult to evaluate. So suppose the problem is same, but there are different solutions to solve it. Why? Because they require to make some plan also. So the drawback is that different technical solutions to the same problem, so difficult to evaluate. This is the drawback of ITT. And very often you might have seen the two concepts, MOA and MOU. MOA stands for Memoranda of Agreement, whereas the MOU stands for Memoranda of Understanding. So then the MOA, what should be written? You have to write both the clauses of this client and the developer. might be so there might be many terms, but a few terms and combinations of MOA they are written here. The customer asks for technical proposals. The technical proposals they are examined and they are discussed. Then all the points were agreed. The agreed technical solution is MOA, and the tenders after the MOA is published. Then tenders are then requested from suppliers based on MOA. So the tenders are judged on price. So normally the tenders are judged on price, and normally we follow L1 price. The low what can say these tenders they are judged on price. Of course, what will the price based on that? Those tenders can be evaluated or judged. The fee could be paid for technical proposals by customer. So the customer may pay some of the fee for the technical proposals. So those clauses must be present in the MOA, Memoranda of Agreement. So last step in this tendering process is evaluation of proposals. It is quite needed to produce an evaluation plan describing how each proposal will be checked and against which selection criteria. So it is needed to produce an evaluation plan describing how each proposal will be checked. The proposal will check against what? The proposal will check against the selection criteria. This reduces the risk of requirements being missed and ensures that all proposals are treated consistently. It would be unfair to favor a proposal because of the presence of a feature not requested in the original requirement. Please see, these are what minor things you must read yourself. It will be very much unfair to favor a proposal because of the presence of a feature not requested in the original requirement. In the requirement, one feature is not there. Suppose you are having just a small college. Reserve option is not required. You do not want to give you do not want to give any concession also. One requirement is not there. In the library example I am saying, if you are a very small organization, you do not want that reserve option for the faculty. But if the firm has put that reserve option, then they should not actually charge high price. It would be unfair to favor a proposal because of the presence of a feature not requested in the original requirement. There are 10 requirements in the original proposal. So see, 3 parties have applied. You check whether exactly those 10 requirements have been covered in all the 3 proposals or not. If somebody has given some extra proposal which is not there in the requirement, you should not give more marks, or you should not favor that proposal because it has contained one more requirement, but which is not required for you, which is not present in the original requirement. Okay. An application could be bespoke, off the shelf or customized. We have already told you. Okay. So an application, it could be bespoke, or that means for a single person. It could be off the shelf, that means directly as it is, or customized, purchase the core system and customize, modify according to your needs. In the case of the shelf packages, the software itself could be evaluated, and it might be possible to combine some of the evaluation with the acceptance testing. Okay, if you are using a off the shelf packages, if you are wanting to go for the off the shelf packages, then the software itself could be evaluated, and it might be possible to combine some of the evaluation with also acceptance testing. With the bespoke development, that means bespoke means you are developing software for only a particular user, particular client. With bespoke development, it could be proposal. It will be a proposal that is evaluated, while course may involve elements of both. Okay, in a course. So we have already seen that in case of off-the-shelf packages, it might be evaluated. It might be possible to combine some of the evaluation with acceptance testing, whereas with bespoke development, it would be a proposal that is evaluated. And in case of course, that means while course may involve elements of both, elements of off-the-shelf packages as well as elements of bespoke development. Thus, different approaches would be needed. So the process of evaluation, how you will evaluate the tenders? Let's see quickly. Normally, you say that only L1. Which one is lowest price, which tender, which farm has given lowest price, you may go for that. That's the easiest way. But in that case, there are some problems, I will say. But some local farms will come, they don't have technical knowledge, they don't have manpower, etc. So that's why nowadays many tendering process, they ask for two bids, one for technical bid, one for financial bid. In technical bid, you have to say that how many manpower you are having, how many manpower you can give, what is your turnover, like that. So that is technical. And another is what this technical financial. Then only how much, based on this, how much price will you have to give. So by the process of evaluating the technical proposal, see many of the local what those are weak firms, they will be rejected because they cannot satisfy all the criteria you have put in this what you have put in the technical bid. They may not satisfy. So all those weak firms, local firms, they may be rejected. Well, then how many remained after scrutinizing the technical bid? Those remaining things, those remaining firms, financial bid will be opened, and then who is L1 among those selected what or remaining proposals, which price is L1, offer or contract should be placed on that farm. The process of evaluation may include the following: scrutiny of the proposal documents. You have to first make some initial scrutiny of the proposal documents. Interviewing suppliers representatives. Very often all the things are not mentioned clearly in the tender paper. So you may take interview, you might have interact with the different firms, their representatives, interviewing suppliers representatives. Demonstrations, still you are not understanding the technical details, you may tell them, give a presentation, demonstrations, and then you evaluate. Still it is not possible. What you see, you ask the those who have quoted tender, where you have done, they will say, okay, nearby areas, let's go there. Conduct site visit, go to the organizations where this particular what farm, he has already got a contract there. So do site visits. And last one is practical test. You say that bring here and we will test. We'll give real life data and we will test it. Perform practical test, perform practical testing. So a process may be evaluated by using either one or a combination of these methods. These are all easy things. Please you read yourself. Okay, these things you may read yourself. These are very simple contents. You please read yourself. Okay, those things will skip. Okay, no. So demonstration we have already discussed. In the last resort, a special volume test could be conducted. So where in the practical test, you can also conduct a volume test to evaluate the proposal. So now let's come here. Finally, a decision has to be taken. So based on your evaluation, suppose you have 10 farms have applied. By looking at the technical bid, you have rejected 3, then remain 7. Then you can see out of these 7, who is having L1, I mean lowest price he has quoted, you can consider that one. So finally decision is made to award the contract to a particular supplier, to a particular farm, based on 2 important concepts: technical details and financial details. The reason for following a structured and objective approach to evaluation is to demonstrate that the decision has been made impartially. You have to make the decision impartially, unbiasedly. So you should follow a structured and objective approach to evaluate the proposals. The reason for following a structured and objective approach to evaluation is to demonstrate that the decision has been made impartially. A project manager cannot be expected to be a legal expert, isn't it? A project manager is not a lawyer. He cannot be expected to be a legal expert. He needs some advice. So every organization, there may be some committee or lawyers, so they may provide the advice. In our institute also, there is a legal advisor. When any court cases or etc. there, he gives his advice. But must ensure that the contract reflects true requirements and expectations of supplier and client. So what contract you are making, it should give true requirements. It must reflect true requirements and expectations of both the suppliers and client. Nothing something extra or nothing something less. So it should accurately reflect, it should accurately represent, it should accurately contain the requirements and expectations of supplier and client. So now let's quickly see what things should be there in the checklist, contract checklist. During the contract, you prepare a checklist. Let's see what should be present. First, you write down the definitions. What terms you have used, define them. What words mean precisely? What do you mean by a supplier, user, application, or third party, etc., or agency? You see them. If you have seen the code papers, they might have written all the definitions: agency, supplier, user, application, etc. Then the checklist also should contain the form of agreement. For example, is this a contract for a sale or a lease or a license to use a software application? Okay, that means this contract is for the selling a house or taking a lease some space or getting a license to use a software application. Can the license be transferred? And if it is a license, whether it can be transferred like this. So the form of agreement also should be there in the contract checklist. Then goods and services to be supplied. What goods and services you want to get it? The goods and services to be supplied. So goods could be equipment and software to be supplied, and this should include an actual list of the individual pieces of equipment to be delivered, complete with the specific model numbers, etc. of the equipment or of the component. You have to write down that. Services to be provided. This should cover such services, such things as whether you want training or not, want documentation or not, want installation or not, and things like that. So in the contract list, there should be the goods and services to be supplied. Their details should be present. That means in goods, you will see the equipments and the software that you want to get, and the other one is services to be provided. What kinds of services are required to be provided to the firm? They have to be also mentioned. Ownership of software. Who is the owner of the software? That also you should mention in the contract. Like, can a client sell the software to others? Because you are the client. Whether that money means they have fully sold you and you can sell yourself to others, that you have to decide and write. Can supplier sell software? Can supplier sell software to others? So this what software can the supplier he can sell to others? Could specify that a customer has exclusive use or only the customer can use it. It cannot be used by the firm or to any or it can be used by any third party. Does supplier retain the copyright? So patents and copyrights. So normally for the services or the software, we cannot get a patent. For software, you can apply for a copyright. So does the supplier retain the copyright? If you are having the copyright, only the supplier he can use it, and when you will buy from him, you have to charge money. You have to pay money. So where a supplier retains the source code, okay. So if you say that the supplier retain the copyright, now where the supplier retains the source code. Suppose supplier is having the source code, then owner is the supplier. Then how to do? Where supplier retains the source code may be a problem. If supplier goes out of business, if that supplier is having the source code, you are only using the app. So now if the software is vanishing from the market, then what to do? Where do you stand? So where supplier retains source code, it may be a problem. If the supplier goes out of business, to circumvent a copy of code could be deposited with an escrow service. Okay, to another. Another you can say another statement here. It is written. It said that to circumvent a copy of the code could be deposited with an escrow service. With an escrow service, a copy of the code could be deposited in order to circumvent. Okay, to circumvent a copy of code could be deposited with an escrow service. So in the checklist, one more component should be there, that is environment. Like for example, where the equipment is to be installed. Okay, in which room or in which what platform or where the equipment is to be installed. Who is responsible for various aspects of site preparation? You see, when we are purchasing the generators, we have to prepare the site, we have to make a basement and like that. Similarly, there should be a provision for current, electricity supply, backup, etc. So, who is responsible for various aspects of site preparation? For example, providing electricity, backup, installation, etc. So, they have to also to be mentioned properly in this environment section. And another is customer commitments. For example, providing access, supplying information, etc. So, what are the commitments from the customer? So customer commitments should be written. For example, providing access. As the customer, you have to give access to the third party to use your building and your computer, your room, your printer. You have to provide access and supplying information. You have to also supply the required information. So these are the items they need to be present in the contract checklist. Similarly, acceptance procedures. What are your acceptance procedures? You should write. The good practice is to accept a delivered system only after user acceptance test, UAT. We have known three important types of testing: unit testing, integration testing, and system testing. In system testing, this user acceptance testing is coming. So it is a good practice to accept a delivered system only after the user acceptance tests are over. Now, part of the contract would specify such details at the time that the customer will have to conduct the test, deliverables upon which the acceptance test are they depend, and the procedure for signing of the testing is completed. So, part of the contract, so some more checklists should be written, like part of the contract would specify such details at the time that the customer will have to conduct the test, how much time the customer will take to conduct the test. Deliverables upon which the acceptance test depend. On what deliverables the acceptance test depend. The acceptance test again they have to be performed, and the procedure for signing up the testing as completed. So also it should contain the procedure for signing up the testing process as completed. For okay, so this contract checklist also it should contain the procedure for signing up the testing as completed. As completed means as the project is completed. So another item in checklist is standards to be met. This covers the standards with which the goods and services should comply. Which standards your goods and services should follow? You know the different standards such as ISO, ACI, CMM, Six Sigma, PSO, etc. So your goods and services they cover what they cover. Okay, so your checklist should write down. It should cover the standards with which the goods and services should comply. For example, whether they should comply this ISO or they should comply the ACI or they should comply this Six Sigma or PSP. Okay. Similarly, another item in the checklist should be project and quality management. About your quality management details, you must write. About the project and quality management details, you must write maybe in one heading in the contract checklist. Then another important thing is timetable of activities. Which activity should be carried out and when it should be finished. So you should prepare a timetable of the different activities. This provides a schedule of when the key parts of the project they have been started and when they should be completed. Okay. These are some of the items present in the contract checklist. And similarly, the most important term we must write down in the contract document, that is price and payment method. What is the final price? Whatever method you may adopt, but what is the final price and what is the payment method? Obviously, the price is very important. What also needs to be arranged is when the payments are to be made. The payment will be made whether after you receive the good and service or 100% advance before receiving the product, or 80-20 something like that. 80% on receiving and 20% on testing, or advance or quarterly advance like this. So you have to say what is the mode of payment for what is the mode of payment method for your product that has to be mentioned. Okay, what should the payment method in which you should pay money to the firm, that has to be mentioned in the contract checklist. So price and payment method, obviously the price is very important. What also needs to be arranged is when the payments are to be made, and payments may be tied to completion of specific task. It is possible. When you are achieving some milestone, you can make some amount of payment. So payments may be tied to completion of specific tasks. And whatever the remaining amount, that will be paid after the project is completed. Let's quickly look at this contract management. Some terms of contract will relate to management of contract. For example, progress reporting. So in the contract, when you are making, you should also write what should be the progress reporting method. Some terms of contract will relate to management of contract. For example, progress reporting, how you can report the progress. That also should be written in the contract document. Decision points could be linked to release of payments to the contractor. If you will get these achievements, then we will make this much percentage of the payment. Like this, first, when initially start of the contract, we can give say 50%. Then another 20% on receiving the product. Another 30% after the product is tested. So these are the decision points based on which the payments to the contractor can be made. Variations to the contract. How are the changes to requirements dealt with? That also you must write down in the contract document, because always changes will happen. So when changes will happen, how to deal with? That method should be written. Variations to the contract. If changes are there, how are changes to the requirements dealt with? How, if there is a change in requirement, how it can be dealt with? That should be mentioned in the contract management. Finally, you should write down the acceptance criteria. On what basis you will accept, whether it is fully working or 99% error free or zero fault tolerance, or whatever that. What is the acceptance criteria? That has to be mentioned in this contract document. Okay. How do you evaluate the following? That you must write. How do you evaluate the following? You must write in the contract document. What is the usability of an existing package? How an existing package can be used? Usability of an application yet to be built, an application you have not developed that has to be developed. What will this usability? Maintenance cost of the hardware. The time taken to respond for queries, request for software support. How much time you will take to respond to request for software product? And also training. How to arrange the training when a new technology or new software comes. So how do you evaluate the following? Please think of how you can evaluate the followings accordingly, and accordingly clauses can be mentioned where in the contract document. So contracts should include agreement about how the customer or supplier relationship is to be managed. What will the payment term? What are the receiving conditions? What are the conditions that should be followed while receiving some item? So what is the receive or item received clause, like that? The contract should include agreement about how customer supplier relationship is to be managed. For example, what should the decision points which could be linked to the payment? That means if this is completed, say 50% payment. Completion of another 5 functionalities, another 20%. When all the functionality will be completed, then 100% payment. You should carry out some quality reviews, whether some quality review terms should be mentioned in the contract document, that the product should be ISO 9000 certified or ACI SMM or Six Sigma certified, like that. Some quality reviews, those clauses should also be there in the contract document. Then changes to requirements, because the requirements cannot be frozen at the beginning. Requirements will continue to change, and if there is a change in requirement, how to deal to it, how the firm will address it. So changes to requirements must be written in the contract document. It's a part of the contract management. You must write the ways to handle changes to requirements. You must write in the contract document. Today we have presented an introduction to managing contracts. We have discussed the different classification of contracts along with their advantages and the disadvantages. We have also discussed which type of contract is best suitable in which cases or in which environment. We have explained the different stages in contract placement, how you can place a contract, how you can place a contract on a firm, We have discussed the typical terms of a contract. Those terms must be there in the contract checklist. We have also explained some terms of contract which relate to management of contract. So we have discussed some terms of a contract which relate to the management of contract. So this is what we have discussed today regarding this contract management. We have taken it from the software project management book. Thank you very much. Now let's see any questions, please. This is a little bit easy chapter. Can read yourself. So one question may come from this. Please have a look into this and read all those things. There is nothing difficult that help is required. I hope you should be able to read yourself. Okay. Any doubt, please? All right. We'll stop. If there are no more doubts, then we should stop here. Quickly take the